Today we're crocheting a mesh cardigan using the V-stitch. For this project, we're making 3 different pieces and sewing them together. For the free written pattern, you can find it at vivcrochets.com or linked in the description. And if you like this tutorial, please leave a like or comment to let me know. Thanks so much, and let's get started. For this project, I'm using Casey Essential Cotton Yarn in the color cream. I used a total of 530 grams. It's a number 3 weight yarn, and it recommends a 3.75 millimeter hook, but I decided on a 5 millimeter hook instead to make it drape better. And then I'm also using scissors, a yarn needle, and some stitch markers. And you can use bobby pins or safety pins instead. And as always, everything will be linked in the description. First, we're going to start with the body of the cardigan, and we're going to make a slip knot. And to make a slip knot, place the yarn over your hand with the tail end at the bottom. Hold the yarn with your thumb and make sure you leave a long enough loose end. Grab it from the top, wrap it around 2 fingers to form an X, and hold it with your pinky. Then with your hook, go under one side of the X, over, grab the other side and pull it through. Then remove your fingers and tighten the knot. Now we're going to chain, and to chain, yarn over, pull through. Again, yarn over, pull through. And we're going to chain the entire width of the cardigan. So this includes the front panel, plus the back panel, plus the other front panel. And the number of chains you do must be a multiple of 3. So here I did a multiple of 3, I did 183 chains. So this whole chain includes the front and back panels. Now we're going to start our first row, and we're going to work into the 4th chain from the hook. So this is the first, the second, the third, and this is the 4th. And in this 4th chain, we're going to do a double crochet, chain 1, then a double crochet into the same chain. So to do double crochet, yarn over, insert your hook into this 4th chain from the hook, and make sure you go through the V and under the loop in the back as well. Yarn over, pull through, and now we should have 3 loops on our hook. We'll yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And that's our first double crochet. Then we're going to chain 1, and we're going to do another double crochet into that same chain. So again, yarn over, insert your hook back into that same space, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And that's our first V stitch. Now we're going to skip 2 chains. So we'll skip 1, 2, and in the next we're going to repeat that V stitch, which is a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. So again, yarn over and go into this chain, and we're going to go under the back loop 2, and we'll do a double crochet. Then we're going to chain 1 and do another double crochet into the same chain. And that's another V stitch. Then we'll skip 2 again and do a V stitch in the next. And the reason why we also go under the back loop of the chain is to keep the chain small. If you go under just the top loop, then this hole will open up. So here we have 3 V stitches, and we're going to continue this pattern by skipping 2 and then doing a V stitch in the next chain. And we're going to do this all the way across. After our last V stitch, we should have 2 chains left, and we're going to skip 1 chain, and then in the very last chain we're going to do just 1 double crochet.
Now our first row is done. So this first row and every row we'll do has a double crochet at the very front. So these 3 chains that we skipped counts as 1 double crochet. And then we have a V-stitch all the way in between. And finally a double crochet at the end. So the 1 double crochet at the very front and at the very end help keep the sides straight. So row 2 is the row that we're going to be repeating, and to start row 2 we're going to chain 2 and then turn. And these 2 chains counts as the double crochet on the side. And now we're going to start our V-stitches. And our V-stitches are going to go in between the V-stitches from last row. So this V here, we're going to work in the space in the middle. So in this chain 1 space, we're going to do the V-stitch. So we'll yarn over, go into this space, and do a double crochet. And chain 1, and do another double crochet. Then we'll move on to the next V, this one here, and we'll do another V-stitch in this space here. And then we'll move on to the next V and do a V-stitch in the chain 1 space. And we're going to do that all the way across. After our final V-stitch, we're going to put 1 double crochet into the very end. We're facing the back so you can sort of flip it, and then you can see the V's of the chain. So if you look from the top, you can see the V of this double crochet. We're going to go into the one on the left of it. So yarn over, insert your hook into this V, and we'll go under the loop in the back as well, and do a double crochet. And that'll keep the edge straight. And we're going to repeat this row, so let's do it one more time. We're going to chain 2 and turn. And then we're going to start doing our V-stitches in the chain 1 space between each V-stitch from the row before. Once we reach the end of the row, we're going to do our final V-stitch, and then we're going to do just 1 double crochet at the very end. So again, look at this last double crochet here, and if you look at it from the top, there's that V at the top of this double crochet, and then the 2 chains we made at the beginning of last row. We're going to go into the chain at the top. So it's the V right next to the double crochet here. And we're going to go into the V and do a double crochet. So this will be the bottom of the cardigan plus an extra row that we'll do later. So imagine it's right here. This will be the bottom of the cardigan, and then this length, the rows we add, we're going to go up until we want to make the armholes. So here I've done 25 rows, and I'm ready to split the front from the back panel for the armholes. So this is about 27 centimeters long, and I want my sleeve to be about this wide, so I'm going to stop where I want the sleeve holes to start. So we have this really long panel, and when we fold the sides in like this, you can start to see the cardigan forming. We have the front panels and then the back panel. So now we're going to work these 3 pieces by themselves, the back panel and then each front panel. First, we're going to mark where we want the front panels and the back panel to start.
So you can pull this in and make the neck opening smaller, or you can make it wider, and that'll also make the cardigan wider. And you want to make sure that each front panel is about the same width. So mine is 21 centimeters, and then the total cardigan width will be about 54 centimeters. And I have the neck opening around 11 centimeters. So we're going to grab 2 stitch markers and we're going to mark either end. First, we're going to count how many V-stitches are along this front panel. So starting from this end, I'll count this as the first V, and then the second, so I have about 13 here, and I'm going to mark the space right after my 13th V-stitch. So I have 13 V-stitches across here, and I'm going to go over to the other front panel and make sure I have 13 here and then mark after that. So this one is the 13th, and I'll mark right after that 13th V-stitch. And you can double check if everything is the right width, and we can start the first front panel. So where our yarn is still attached, we're going to work to the stitch marker and then back and forth. So we're not going all the way around anymore. We're just working back and forth across this front panel. And we're going to start the row normally. We'll chain 2 and turn. And now we're going to continue this row as normal, just doing a V-stitch into every V-stitch from the row before, and we're going to go across and stop at our stitch marker. So after our last V-stitch before the stitch marker, we're going to put a double crochet into this space. So just before the next V-stitch. So we can take the stitch marker out, and we're going to put a double crochet into this space between the V-stitches. And that's the end of the row, and we're going to start a new row by chaining 2 and turning. And doing our V-stitches. And just continuing the rows as normal. And we're just going to work back and forth, building up the rows of the front panel the same way we did these rows. So here I have 14 rows, and this is going to be the width of my sleeve. And it's about 16 centimeters. And if you want your sleeve to be a different width, you can do more or less rows. And now we can fasten off, but we're going to leave a long enough loose end to sew the top of the front panel to the top of the back panel. So that's along the top of our shoulder. So we're going to chain 1, and then we'll measure out twice this length, because that's about how much we'll need to sew it. So there's 1, and then 2, and then we'll add some extra just in case and for a loose end. And we'll cut our yarn. And then pull through with our hook and tighten the knot. Now we finished one of the front panels, and now we're going to work on the other front panel. So make sure it's flipped like this. We have the finished front panel on the right end, and we're going to start from the stitch marker and go back and forth across to build the second front panel. So we're going to grab our yarn and attach it, and to attach it we're going to make another slip knot. So again, place the yarn over your hand with the tail end at the bottom, hold it with your thumb, wrap it around 2 fingers to form an X, use your hook, go under one side of the X, over, grab the other side, and pull it through. And we're not going to tighten our slip knot, we're going to take it off our hook so you can hold it on your finger. And then take your hook out, and then we're going to go over to the stitch marker. So between these 2 V-stitches, we're going to attach our yarn. So insert your hook into this space, and then put the slip knot back on your hook. and tighten it. And then pull this loop through that space. And then chain 1. And now it's attached. And we can take out our stitch marker. So we've already chained 1, and to start a row we have to chain 2. So I'll chain 1 more. And then we're going to work our V-stitches across. And we'll work our rows like we've been doing, just doing a V-stitch into every V-stitch from the row before. And we're going to work back and forth doing the same number of rows we did for the first panel. And again, I did 14 rows. So I've just finished 14 rows on this other front panel, and now they're identical, and we just need to fasten off and leave a long enough loose end to sew the top again. So again, we'll chain 1, measure out twice this length, and then a little extra for a loose end. Cut our yarn, pull through with our hook, and tighten the knot. So now this is what we have. And now we just need to work on the back panel. So these are the 14 rows I just finished. We're going to flip it and make sure that the one we just finished is on the left side. And we'll attach our yarn here to start the back panel. Again, we'll make a slip knot. But don't tighten it yet, we'll take it off our hook. And then if you look over here, we're going to attach our yarn to the space right after this V-stitch. So this space here. So there's going to be a V-stitch in between the front panel and then the back panel. So put your yarn back on your hook and pull through this space. And then we'll chain 2 to start the first row. And now we'll just work our rows as normal. So at the end of our first row, we'll do our final V-stitch in the second to last V-stitch. And then we're going to put a double crochet into the space between the last 2. So we'll have a V-stitch in between the front and the back panel. And now we'll keep adding rows until we have 14 to match with the front panels. So for the back panel, I also did 14 rows, and you can see that everything lines up. And for this one, we're going to fasten off again. So chain 1, and this time we're just going to leave enough for a loose end. Cut our yarn. Pull through with our hook and tighten the knot. So now the body panels for our cardigan are finished, and now we can work on the sleeves.
And we're going to start the same way with a slip knot.
So we're going to make sure that the width of our sleeve fits in this space that we left here. So we can use what we've already crocheted as a gauge swatch. First, we're going to measure the height of the 14 rows that we did, and mine is 16 centimeters. And then we're going to measure out how many V-stitches there are in 16 centimeters. So I'll put the 0 at the left side of one V-stitch, and then I'll stretch it out along the row. And at 16, these V-stitches are 16 centimeters long. And then I'll count how many. And there are 10 V-stitches in these 16 centimeters. And then I'll multiply that by 2 for the circumference of the sleeve. So 10 times 2 is 20. And then remember, we also have this V-stitch gap between the front and back panel, and that'll add one more V-stitch. So we're going to have 21 V-stitches in our sleeve width. And to calculate how many chains we'll need, multiply that number by 3, that's 63, and then add 3 more, so 66 chains. So let's start chaining. And here I have 66 chains,
This will be the total width of the sleeve, like that. Now we're going to slip stitch to the first chain that we made to form a loop. So first we're going to make sure that the chain isn't twisted. So we have our chains facing up now, and we're going to run our fingers over the chains and make sure it's still facing up and not twisting. And our very first chain, we're going to go over to it and insert our hook into just the top loop. And then we'll do a slip stitch. And to do slip stitch, yarn over, pull through, and pull through the loop on our hook, and tighten. And now it's going to naturally rotate like that. And now we have this ring to work into. And from now on, we'll be working under both the top loop and the back loop of the chains. Now we have our foundation, and we're going to start our first row. In our first row, we're not going to do V-stitches, we're going to do one row of double crochets. So chain 2, and we're going to work into that chain we just slip stitched to. So yarn over, insert your hook back into that same space that you slip stitched to, and do a double crochet. And then we're going to work into the next chain and do a double crochet. Make sure you're going under both loops of the chain. And we're going to continue working all the way around, doing one double crochet into each chain. Now I'm at my last chain here. This one is a chain, and then this one is the slip stitch. We're not going to go into the slip stitch.
Now we've gone all the way around, and we should have the same number of stitches as the number of chains we did earlier. So again, I have 66 stitches. And now we're going to slip stitch to close the round, and we're going to do this at the end of every round. Make sure that your loop isn't twisted, and we're going to slip stitch to the first double crochet we made. So here you can see our chain 2, and then the first double crochet, and at the top there's a V. We're going to go under the V at the top, and then we're going to yarn over, pull through, and pull through the loop on our hook, and tighten to slip stitch. And now we're done with round 1. Now we're going to start round 2. To start this round, we're going to chain 4, and then double crochet into that same stitch that we slip stitched to. And this chain 4 and double crochet counts as our first V-stitch. Now we're going to skip 2 stitches, so 1 and 2, and then in the next we're going to do a V-stitch. So do a double crochet under the V at the top of this stitch. Then chain 1 and do another double crochet into that same stitch. And we're going to repeat that, so skip 2, and in the next do a V-stitch. And we're going to repeat this all the way around. Skip 2, V-stitch in the next. After our final V-stitch, we should have 2 stitches left, and we're going to skip over them and slip stitch to the first V-stitch we made. So we're going to look at these 4 chains we made at the start of the round, and we're going to count the second one down from the top. There's 1, and this is the second one. We'll go into this V and under the back loop and do a slip stitch. Again, yarn over, pull through,
and pull through the loop on our hook and tighten. And that makes a continuous V-stitch. So that's round 2. Round 3 is going to be very similar to round 2, but first we need to slip stitch to this V-stitch right here. So go into this V-stitch and slip stitch.
And to start every new round, we'll chain 4.
And then we'll do a double crochet back into this V-stitch. So this counts as a V-stitch into the V-stitch below. Now we're going to do more V-stitches into every V-stitch. So we'll move on to the next one and we'll do a V-stitch into this space. And then we'll move on to the next and do a V-stitch. And we're going to do that all the way around. And after our final V-stitch, we're going to do the same thing we did at the end of the last round, which is slip stitch to the second chain down of this chain 4. So again, we'll count 1 and 2, and in the second chain, we'll do a slip stitch. Now round 3 is done, and we're going to repeat that round until we get the length of the sleeve we want. So just to recap, the start of every round, we're going to slip stitch into this V-stitch here. Then chain 4. And do double crochet into this V-stitch. And this counts as our first V-stitch, and we'll do V-stitches into every V-stitch from the round before. And then at the end of every round, we'll do our final V-stitch. And then slip stitch to the second chain down of this chain 4. So here are my 4 rounds, and we're going to continue repeating that last round until we get the length of the sleeve we want. And depending on how wide you made the body of your cardigan, this sleeve might actually be shorter than the length of your arm.
So if you made the body panel oversized, your shoulder might be here, and you would need to remove this much length from your sleeve.
So here I've done 35 total rounds. So that's 1 double crochet round and then 34 V-stitch rounds. And my sleeve is about 40 centimeters long. So you can do however many rounds you want to make the sleeve as long or as short as you want. And once you're happy with the length, we can fasten off. So I've just done a slip stitch to the second chain down, and then to fasten off, we're going to chain 1, and then we're going to measure out our yarn because we're going to use it to sew the sleeve to the body part of the cardigan. So we're going to make sure that the loose end that we leave is long enough to sew around this sleeve. So we're going to measure out double this length. So here is the length around the opening of the sleeve. And then we're going to double that. And then also leave a little more just in case. And then we'll cut our yarn and pull through with our hook. And tighten this knot. Now our sleeve panel is done, and we're going to make an identical sleeve. So again, I started with 66 chains, and then I did a round of double crochets, and then I did 34 rounds of V-stitches. And then we're also going to fasten off with an extra long loose end that we can use for sewing. Now we have our body panel and our 2 sleeves, and we'll sew them all together. First, we're going to fold in the front panels, and we'll sew the tops of the shoulders using the loose ends we left on the front panels. Then we're going to attach our sleeves by using the loose ends that we left on our sleeves. So I folded my body panel, and I have the front panels folded in so that the loose end that we left is on the right side.
So right here and right here. And if yours are on the left side, then you can flip it the other way. And then they'll be on the opposite side. So we're going to start on the right side. And we're going to take this loose end and thread it into our yarn needle. And we're going to connect the tops of the front and back panels together. So you can sew it however you want, but I'll be doing the whip stitch. So I think it's a little easier if you hold the front panel a little lower and then fold the back panel down like that. And we can look at the stitches and line them up properly. So first we can see that the back panel has a chain 2 at the end and the front panel has a stitch. So we need to connect those two first. So go into the top of the chain 2 and we're going to go under the V of the chain. So go under the V of the chain like that, then go over to the front panel and look for the V at the top of this stitch all the way at the end and go under it like that. And then pull the yarn through. And make sure it's taut. And then we can move on to the next stitch. So the next stitch is going to be the first double crochet of this V stitch here. And we're going to go into the V at the top of this first stitch. So go down, make sure you get under that V. And then on the front panel, we're going to go under the V of this stitch. And pull the yarn through. Now we're at a chain 1 space. So the chain 1 in the V stitch, we're going to also go down and make sure we go under the V of that chain. And then to the front panel, go under the V of this chain. And pull the yarn through. Now is the next stitch. We'll go down under the V of this stitch, then over to the front panel, go under the V of this stitch, and pull the yarn through. And we're going to continue across, making sure that we connect every stitch and everything is lining up, and make sure that it doesn't catch on the side. And you pull it taut. So after you sew up the last V stitch, we still have 1 stitch at the end. So we'll go into the next stitch on the back panel and then go under the top of the chain 2. Pull our yarn through and the top of the shoulder is connected. Now we just need to tie a knot so it doesn't come loose. And to tie a knot, just go under a loop, pull the yarn through but leave a loop, and we'll pull our yarn through that loop and tighten the knot. And we can do a double knot by doing that same thing. Now that this part is connected, we have the other side, and this side is a little bit different because we're going to have to count how many stitches on the back panel. First we'll thread the loose end we left into our yarn needle. Then we're going to count how many V stitches we have on our front panel. I remember I sectioned off 13 for the front panel, but let's count again to make sure. Yep, there's 13 and then there's a stitch on either end. So we need to count 13 V stitches from the end. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So that's 13. But since we have a stitch on the end, we have to go to the stitch to the right of the V stitch. So just after this V stitch, to the right of it, we're going to go into this stitch instead to start. So go over to the back and under that stitch, and then connect the stitch on the end of the front panel. And now we can line up our stitches on the front and back panel and sew across. And don't forget the stitch all the way at the end. And then you can tie a double knot the same way we did earlier for the other side, or you can just tie it to this loose end here. So now this one is connected. Next, we'll sew on our sleeves. Let's start on the right side of the cardigan, and we have our sleeve here. We're going to fold the sleeve along the seam. So where our loose end is coming out, we're going to fold the sleeve along here. And since we worked in rounds, it does sort of twist, so you can try to follow this line and fold it along the line to make sure that the seam is along the bottom. And now our stitches look a lot straighter, and we can start sewing. So we'll take this loose end and thread it into our yarn needle. So we have the opening right here and then our sleeve here, and we're going to start at the bottom. So on the sleeve, we'll go into the first stitch above the knot that we made here. So here's our knot, and then here's the first stitch. We'll go down under that V of that first stitch, and then we'll go over to the body panels, and we're going to look at the V stitch that we skipped in the middle. So this V stitch here was the space between the front and back panels, and we're going to attach this first stitch on the sleeve to the right stitch of the V stitch. So go in from the back and under the V, and then pull the yarn through. And then we'll go to the next stitch of the sleeve, and that's the chain one between the V stitch. So go under that V of the chain one, then go over to the body panel and into this chain one. And pull the yarn through. Then we'll move on to the next stitch on the sleeve, and the next stitch on the body panel, and then the next stitch on the sleeve. And now we're going to start working into the side of the rows on the body panel. So now the body panel doesn't have stitches, it's just the side of the row. So we're going to have to make sure that we space everything evenly, and it's a little easier to do if you use stitch markers, so you can mark the tops together to connect them. So this is the top of the sleeve, and I'll connect it to the top of the body panel along the seam. And it might make it easier if you add more along here and then remove them as you stitch up. So we've just gone into the next stitch on the sleeve, and we're going to go into the side of the row on the front panel. So just go through a loop along the side and pull it through. Then we'll go to the next stitch on the sleeve panel, then go into a loop along the front panel and pull it through. Again, next stitch on the sleeve, into a loop on the front panel. And we're just going to keep going up until we reach up here. So now we're coming up on the top of the sleeve and the body panel, and we can take our stitch marker out and we can continue stitching. It might be easier if you stick your hand into the inside of the cardigan. And we're going to slowly rotate to start working on the other side. So now we can flip this over. And we're going to sew down the rest of the sleeve to the back panel. And we're going to do the same thing and make sure everything is lining up. And make sure there's no holes left. Now it's completely connected, and we're going to tie a knot like we did earlier. So we're going to go under a loop near where our yarn is coming out. Pull our yarn through, but leave a loop at the end. Then go into that loop and tighten the knot. Then do that one more time. And now we've connected one of our sleeves to the body panels. Then we'll go to the other side, grab our other sleeve, make sure we have it folded along the seam, and we'll thread our yarn needle. And we're going to start with going into the V-stitch in between the front and back panel. And we'll go into the left stitch first this time. And then to the stitch above the knot. And we'll start from there, and we'll do the same thing we did with the other sleeve. Just slowly working around to first connect the front panel to the sleeve, then flipping it over and going around and connecting the back panel to the sleeve. And remember to tie a knot at the end. So after we finish sewing together all of the pieces, we're going to outline the opening so the edges are nice and finished. If you tend to crochet on the looser side, then you might want to size down your hook to maybe a 4mm hook. If it lays flat, then you're good, but if it's scrunching in, then you might need a bigger hook, and if it's flaring out, you might need a smaller hook. And we're going to start here at the back panel. And then we'll go down the front panel. And we'll go around the bottom. Around the other side. Back up this other front panel. And we'll finish where we started. So first we'll attach our yarn here. And we're going to flip it. So right now we have the front. We're going to flip it so we're facing the back, and we'll grab our yarn and make a slip knot. And we'll attach it to the back panel. And you can attach it anywhere on the back panel, doesn't really matter. I'll just go into this V-stitch here and attach it. And then we're going to chain 2. And we're going to do a round of double crochets. So similar to how we just did one row of double crochets on the sleeves, we're going to do one row here. So in the same space that we attached the yarn to, we'll do a double crochet. And for every stitch, we're going to do a double crochet. And we'll also do a double crochet into every chain 1 space. Every stitch. And we're going to pause at this corner and we're going to leave 1 stitch before the corner. So I still have my chain 1 space I need to put a stitch in, and we're going to do a double crochet 3 together. So that's going to create a curve, and to do double crochet 3 together, we're going to start a double crochet 3 different times and finish at the end. So we'll yarn over, insert our hook into this chain 1 space, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. So we started our first double crochet, and we'll start our second in this corner. So yarn over, insert your hook into this corner, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. So that's our second, and now we're going to start another double crochet into the side of this row. So yarn over, insert your hook into the side of this first row here, just go in this space, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, and we have 4 loops on our hook. We're going to yarn over and pull through all 4 loops. So that will create a curve for our corner. Now we're going to rotate and just continue working down the front panel, and for every row we're going to do 2 double crochets. So this first row we already put 1 double crochet here as part of our double crochet 3 together here, and we need to put 1 more into the same space. Now we'll move on to the next row, so this next space here, and we'll put 2 double crochets into this space. Then move on to the next row and do 2 double crochets. And we'll do that all the way down the front panel. So I've gone down the front panel. In this very last corner, we're going to put 5 double crochets. And we'll rotate it. And we can start working along the bottom of the front panel. So here you can see the V-stitch, then a space, V-stitch, space, and we're only going to work into the spaces between the V-stitches. And we're going to do 2 double crochets into each of these spaces. So we'll do our first double crochet into this space, and we'll do 1 more. So now there are 2 in this space. Then we're going to skip over this V-stitch and go into the next space and do 2 double crochets into here as well. And we'll do that all the way around the bottom. And once we've gone all the way around the bottom, we'll reach this corner here and we're going to do 5 double crochets again. And then we'll work up the side of the other front panel and do 2 double crochets into the side of each row, the same as we did for the other front panel. Once we go up the other front panel, we're going to reach this corner again, and for the last row before that corner, we're only going to do 1 double crochet, and then we're going to do a double crochet 3 together. So first, start a double crochet in this same space in this last row. So yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. Then go into the corner, so yarn over, and insert your hook into the corner, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. Then we'll rotate, and we'll do 1 more into this chain 1 space. So yarn over, insert your hook into the chain 1 space, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through all 4 loops. And then we can do our double crochets along the back panel like we did in the very beginning. 1 into each stitch and 1 into each chain space.
And after our last stitch, we'll reach the very beginning of this round and we're going to slip stitch. So find your first stitch, insert your hook into the top, yarn over, pull through, and pull through the loop on our hook and tighten. And I'm only doing one round, but if you want it to be a little wider, you can do another round of double crochets. So just chain 2 and then start in the stitch that you slip stitch to and just double crochet all the way around and then slip stitch at the end. And once you're ready to fasten off, we're going to chain 1 and cut our yarn and pull through with our hook and tighten the knot. Now our cardigan is almost done. We just need to weave in our loose ends. So let's take this loose end that we just made and thread it into our yarn needle. And I like to hide my loose ends on the inside so it's less noticeable. So we're going to turn it so we're on the inside of the sweater and we're going to go down this way. And pull our yarn through. And we're going to go under the double crochet stitches here and under these loops at the bottom of the double crochets. So after you go under a few stitches, pull the yarn through. And make sure it's not too tight. And we're going to go back in the opposite direction. So skip over one loop and then go under these loops again, going back the way we came. And after this, you can do this one more time back the first direction, but I'm just going to weave in the rest of my loose ends. So I'm going to go under as much as I can and then pull the yarn through. And snip off the rest of the loose end. Now it's hidden, and we can do that for the rest of our loose ends.
And our mesh cardigan is finished. And a special thanks to Taddy Blake for sending me this beautiful handbag. You can find the discount code and links in the description. That's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. And if you did, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And let me know if you have any questions. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.